My name is Naomi Whitmore, and the morning my husband brought me breakfast to the office was the morning my life quietly split in two. If I had eaten that meal, my daughter would never have existed. It was just after 8, the city still half asleep, when Marcus Hale walked into my office carrying a thermal food container. That alone was strange. In 3 years of marriage, my husband, the CEO of a billion-dollar company, had never once shown up unannounced with anything homemade. Not flowers, not coffee, certainly not breakfast. He smiled at me, a careful smile, the kind that looks warm until you stare at it too long. "Happy anniversary," he said. 3 years, I wanted to do something nice for you. The smell hit me the moment he set the container on my desk. Heavy, rich, too strong. My stomach twisted instantly. For weeks I had been battling relentless morning sickness, the kind that turns even familiar scents into threats. Marcus did not know I was pregnant. No one did. I forced myself to stay calm, hands folded neatly, heart pounding far louder than my thoughts. He leaned closer, watching me, waiting. "Eat while it is hot," he said softly. "I made it myself." Something about the way he said it made the room feel smaller, tighter. In that moment I did not feel loved, I felt observed. And somehow, without knowing why, I knew this was not a gift. It was a test. Before that morning, I thought I understood my life. I was Naomi Whitmore, Senior Operations Director at Hale Industries, and the woman standing quietly beside a powerful man. People often assumed I lived in luxury, but the truth was simpler. I worked long hours, wore the same neutral suits year after year, and believed stability was something you earned through patience. Marcus Hale and I had been married for 3 years. On paper, we were impressive. He was decisive, disciplined, admired by investors. I was organized, loyal, and efficient. Together, we looked unbreakable. But behind closed doors, something had shifted months earlier. Marcus had grown distant in small, deniable ways. Fewer conversations, longer silences. Questions about finances that felt more like interrogations. He talked often about risk, about protecting assets, about how people became liabilities when emotions got involved. I told myself this was stress. CEOs carried weight most people never saw. What I did not tell him was that my body had changed. 3 months earlier, I had discovered I was pregnant, after years of being told it might never happen. I kept the secret not out of manipulation but caution. My nausea was constant. My energy vanished, and something deep inside me whispered that timing mattered. I wanted to wait for the right moment. A quiet dinner, a peaceful day. I did not know that peace was already gone. I did not know my husband was no longer thinking like a man building a family but like one protecting a fortress. And I did not yet understand that in his world, even a child could be considered a threat. Her name was Leila Moore. She had joined the company just 3 months earlier as an executive assistant assigned to my floor. Young, polished, and carefully ambitious, Leila moved through the office with a confidence that felt rehearsed. She dressed sharply, spoke softly, and watched everything. Especially Marcus. I noticed it in small moments. The way her posture changed when he entered a room. How her voice softened when she addressed him. How she laughed just a little too easily at things that were not funny. That morning, when Marcus stepped out of my office to take a call, Leila appeared in the doorway holding a stack of files. Her eyes flicked immediately to the food container on my desk. "That smells amazing," she said with a smile. "You are so lucky." My stomach rolled again. I knew I could not open that lid without being sick. I smiled back, calm on the surface, exhausted underneath. "I already ate earlier," I said. "I am completely full." She hesitated, glancing down the hallway in Marcus's direction. "It would be a shame to waste his effort," I added. "You have not had breakfast yet, have you?" Her face lit up. She did not ask twice. "Thank you, Naomi," she said, lifting the container with both hands as if it were something precious. "I will make sure it does not go to waste." As she left, I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly, relief washing through me. The nausea eased, my hands stopped shaking. I told myself it was nothing, just food, just another morning. I did not know I had just passed something deadly into another woman's hands. And I did not know that within an hour, the office would be filled with screaming. I was halfway through reviewing a report when the sound hit. It was not loud at first, just a dull thud from the open office area like a chair tipping over. I remember pausing, pen hovering above the page, trying to decide whether to ignore it. Then the scream came. It tore through the floor with a sharpness that made my chest seize. This was not surprise or fear. This was pain, raw and uncontrollable. I stood up so fast my chair slid backward and ran toward the sound. Lila was on the floor beside her desk. The food container lay on its side, the contents spilled across the carpet. The smell was overwhelming now, mixed with something sour and metallic. Lila was clutching her stomach, her body curling in on itself. Her face had drained of color, lips trembling, eyes unfocused. Then I saw the blood. It was spreading beneath her, dark and unmistakable against the light carpet. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Another person started crying. Phones were out, hands were shaking. I stood frozen, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. This cannot be happening, I thought. This cannot be real. That was when Marcus appeared. He came out of his office fast, but he did not rush to Lila. He stopped several steps away, staring at the blood on the floor. His face changed in seconds. Shock gave way to fear. Fear twisted into something far colder. His eyes lifted and locked onto me. There was no concern in them, no confusion. Only anger, and something else. Disappointment. He strode toward me and grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. His voice was low and shaking when he spoke. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Why her?" In that moment, everything inside me went cold. He was not asking why this happened. He was asking why it happened to her instead of me. The ambulance arrived within minutes, though time felt distorted, stretched thin by panic and disbelief. Lila was rushed out on a stretcher, her face contorted in pain, an oxygen mask pressed over her mouth. Marcus followed closely behind, not once looking back at me, not once asking if I was all right. At the hospital, the waiting room was cold and brightly lit, the kind of place where hope feels fragile. Marcus paced the floor like a trapped animal, running his hands through his hair, stopping only to glare at me as if I were an inconvenience he could not remove. When the doctor finally came out, the room went silent. He spoke carefully, choosing his words the way professionals do when the truth is heavy. Lila had suffered acute poisoning, he said. She was stable now, but there had been severe internal bleeding. The cause was identified as misoprostol, administered in a dangerously high dose. I frowned. I had heard the name before, but never imagined it spoken like this. The doctor continued, "It is a drug used to induce uterine contractions. In this case, it caused an immediate miscarriage." Marcus went pale. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then the final sentence landed. She was approximately 6 weeks pregnant. The air left my lungs, my legs felt weak, and I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. 6 weeks. Marcus sank into his seat, his face buried in his hands, but as I watched him, something felt wrong. His reaction was not grief. It was calculation collapsing under pressure. In that sterile room, the truth began to assemble itself piece by piece. Lila had been pregnant. The food had been poisoned. And somehow, impossibly, I was still standing. Which meant I was never meant to be there. The questions did not stop once the doctor left. Police officers arrived and began asking how the food had been prepared, who had touched it, where it had been kept. I answered calmly, replaying the morning in my mind with painful clarity. I had opened the container once. I had not eaten. I had not added anything. Then I gave it to Lila. Marcus told a different story. He said he cooked everything himself. He said the food never left his sight until he placed it on my desk. He said I was alone with it for nearly an hour. As he spoke, I realized he thought he had built a perfect trap. But he had missed one detail. The toxicology report came back quickly. The drug had been fully dissolved into the food, not sprinkled, not added later. It had been mixed thoroughly while the food was still hot. That meant the poison was there from the beginning. Marcus had prepared it that way. I looked at him then, really looked at him, and understood the truth with terrifying clarity. That breakfast was never meant for Lila. It was meant for me. For my body, for the child growing inside me that he did not know about, or perhaps suspected and feared. The nausea that saved me was not a weakness, it was a shield. Lila had not been targeted. She had been collateral damage. And the man I had married had planned to erase his own child to protect his wealth. In that moment I stopped feeling afraid. I started feeling focused. I did not confront Marcus again. I did not accuse him, cry, or demand explanations. Instead, I did what years of working in executive rooms had taught me to do. I watched, I listened, I remembered everything. I let him believe I was shaken and confused. I spoke less. I avoided his eyes. I allowed him to think fear had made me small. That illusion was useful. Within hours, I noticed how restless he became. He checked his phone constantly. He stepped out to take calls and lowered his voice whenever I came near. The man who once controlled every detail now moved like someone racing against time. That was when Rachel Kim stepped in. Rachel had been my assistant for years, long before my marriage. She knew my habits, my silences, and the way my voice changed when something was wrong. I asked her to quietly pull the security logs from the parking garage and internal cameras. Nothing obvious, nothing that would raise alarms. What she found mattered. Marcus's car had arrived at the building nearly an hour before he came up to my office with the food. Nearly 60 minutes unaccounted for, too long for traffic, too long for coincidence. Then there was another clip. A man using the emergency stairwell, carrying a black trash bag instead of using the regular disposal area. His face was partially hidden, but his posture was unmistakable. It was Marcus's personal aide. I stared at the screen, my hand resting instinctively on my stomach. People do not hide trash unless they are hiding guilt. And suddenly the picture sharpened. This had never been a moment of impulse. It had been planned. Once I understood this was planned, I stopped looking at Marcus as my husband. I looked at him the way I would analyze any executive under suspicion. Rachel and I followed the trail that never lies: money. At first, it looked ordinary: reimbursements, consulting fees, representation expenses, the kind of vague categories companies use every day. But when we lined them up month by month, a pattern emerged. Large transfers, always the same amount, always routed through a small management firm I had never heard of. The company did not exist beyond paper. Its address was a rented mailbox, its phone number forwarded to a private line, and its registered agent was Marcus's personal aide. From there, the money flowed again, straight into rent payments for a luxury apartment across town, high-end building, private parking, concierge service, the kind of place no junior assistant could afford on a salary. That apartment belonged to Lila. I sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. While Marcus lectured me about tightening expenses and protecting our future, he had been using company funds to build another woman a life. The dresses, the bags, the quiet confidence she wore like armor, none of it had been earned. It had been financed. I thought about how often people excuse betrayal by calling it emotional. This was not emotional. It was logistical. It was deliberate. It was documented. When someone hides money, they are not just hiding an affair. They are hiding intent. And intent always leads somewhere darker. By the time I opened my eyes again, my path was clear. I would not confront him at home. I would dismantle him where he felt most powerful. In the systems he believed belonged to him. There was only one question left. How did Marcus get the drug? Misoprostol was not something you picked up casually. It required access, knowledge, and someone willing to bend the rules. Rachel found the name first. Sophia Grant. She was a licensed pharmacist and a former classmate of Marcus from years ago, back when ambition still looked like charm. They had dated briefly, long before he married me. I remembered her now, polished, intelligent, the kind of woman who never believed consequences applied to her. We arranged to meet in a quiet coffee shop tucked away from the main streets. A place with cameras, low music, and no privacy illusions. Sophia arrived confident, dressed carefully, sunglasses still on indoors. She smiled as if this were a reunion. I did not waste time. I placed a printed still image between us. A security frame showing her handing a small wrapped package to Marcus's aide in a back alley, 2 days before the incident. Her smile collapsed. "You know what this is?" I said calmly. "And you know what it cost." She tried to deny it at first, claimed it was paperwork, claimed I was reaching. But her hands were shaking, and her eyes kept drifting to the door. I leaned forward slightly. "Marcus is already preparing to blame someone else," I said. "If this comes out, he will not protect you. He will sacrifice you." Silence stretched between us. Then her shoulders dropped. She whispered, "He told me it was to end a pregnancy quietly. He said it was his wife's child." That was the moment Sophia realized she had not helped a man in trouble. She had helped commit a crime. And I was no longer asking. I was offering her a choice. Sophia did not cry right away. She sat very still, staring at the table between us as if the wood might open and swallow her whole. Then, slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. She placed it near my hand but did not let go. "I kept everything," she said quietly. "Messages, call recordings, payment confirmations." I did not trust him, not completely. That admission told me more about Marcus than anything else. Later that night, alone in my office, I locked the door and inserted the drive into my computer. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight, like I was bracing for impact. His voice filled the room. Cold, controlled, familiar. "I want it to look natural," he said, "like a spontaneous miscarriage, no complications, no suspicion. The pregnancy is a problem I need gone." I stopped the recording. For a long moment I did not breathe. Then I placed my hand over my stomach, feeling the faintest movement beneath my palm. Life, real and fragile. The nausea that had humiliated me, the weakness I had tried to hide, all of it had been the reason my child was still alive. That recording did not just expose my husband. It rewrote my understanding of love, marriage, and safety. From that moment on, this was no longer about betrayal. It was about survival. And I knew exactly where the truth needed to be heard. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 sharp. Marcus sat at the head of the long conference table, suit pressed, voice steady, playing the role he had perfected over years. To anyone watching, he looked like a man in control, confident, untouchable. I took my seat without meeting his eyes. The agenda moved quickly at first. Financial forecasts, expansion plans, numbers projected onto the screen like nothing in the world had changed. Marcus spoke about vision and responsibility, about protecting shareholder value. When the vote was about to begin, I stood. The sound of my chair sliding back echoed louder than I expected. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward me. "Before we approve anything," I said evenly, "I believe the board deserves to know who is actually managing this company and how that management has been conducted." Marcus stiffened. "This is not the place for personal matters," he snapped. "I agree," I replied. "This is about corporate integrity." I nodded to Rachel, who connected my laptop to the projector. The screen lit up with bank statements, repeated transfers, shell accounts, rental payments tied to a luxury apartment. Murmurs spread around the table. Then I played the recording. Marcus's voice filled the room, stripped of charm and pretense, calmly discussing how to make a miscarriage look natural, how a pregnancy was an obstacle. No one spoke when it ended. Marcus lunged for the projector cable, shouting that it was fake, that I had manipulated the audio. Security stepped in before he reached it. I did not raise my voice. "This evidence has already been submitted to law enforcement," I said. "I am requesting an immediate suspension of Marcus Hale as CEO pending investigation." For the first time since I had known him, Marcus looked small. The vote was unanimous. The doors to the boardroom opened before anyone could say a word. 2 police officers stepped inside, followed by a legal representative from corporate compliance. The air shifted instantly. What had felt like a professional meeting became something else entirely. Marcus turned slowly, his face draining of color. "Mr. Hale," one officer said, "you are required to come with us for questioning regarding attempted poisoning, misuse of controlled substances, and financial misconduct." For a moment, Marcus did not move. Then he laughed sharply, the sound thin and brittle. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "My wife is emotional. She has always been emotional." No one responded. As the handcuffs clicked closed around his wrists, his composure finally shattered. He looked around the room, searching for an ally. His aide stood up abruptly. "I will cooperate," the man blurted out. "I followed orders. I have records, emails, everything." The betrayal was immediate and complete. Marcus twisted toward him, rage flashing across his face, but it was too late. Power drains quickly when fear enters the room. As they led him out, Marcus's eyes found mine. There was no apology there, no regret. only the realization that the woman he tried to silence had dismantled him in the place he loved most. I stayed seated until the doors closed. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. I visited Marcus 1 week later. The detention center smelled like metal and disinfectant, a place designed to strip people of the illusions they once lived by. When he was brought into the visiting room, I barely recognized him. His posture had collapsed. The confidence he wore like armor was gone. He sat across from me, hands trembling. "Naomi," he said softly, leaning toward the glass, "I made a mistake, a terrible one, but we can fix this. Think about what we had. Think about the child." I felt nothing. The word child sounded hollow coming from his mouth, as if it were just another strategy he hoped might still work. I slid the divorce papers through the slot beneath the glass. "Sign them." His eyes widened. "You would throw everything away, you would destroy our family." "You destroyed it," I replied calmly, "the day you decided my body and my child were problems to eliminate." He started crying then, real tears, or maybe fear, it was hard to tell. "I do not want to lose everything," he whispered. I met his eyes for the last time. "You already lost it, Marcus, you just did not know when." He signed. The pen shook in his hand as if it carried the weight of every choice he had made. I stood up without looking back. That chapter of my life ended not with anger, but with clarity. 6 months later, I was back in the same hospital. The lights were just as bright, the hallways just as cold, but this time I was not there to witness loss. I was there to bring life into the world. Labor was long and exhausting, the kind that forces you to confront every fear you thought you had already survived. As pain came in waves, my mind drifted back to that morning in my office, to the meal I never ate, to how close I had come to losing everything. Then I heard her cry. Clear, strong, alive. The nurse placed my daughter on my chest, warm and trembling, and in that moment the past finally loosened its grip on me. I named her Grace. Not because life had been gentle, but because I had been spared. While I learned how to hold a newborn, the board finalized its decision. I was appointed interim CEO, tasked with stabilizing the company Marcus had nearly destroyed. I accepted without hesitation. Rebuilding came naturally to me. I had spent years holding broken systems together. This time I was rebuilding with honesty, transparency, and no fear of the truth. As I held Grace close, I understood something clearly. Survival is not just about escaping harm. Sometimes it is about rising into the life you were almost denied. People often ask me how I knew something was wrong that morning. The truth is, I did not know. I felt it. There is a quiet voice inside us that speaks long before evidence appears. We are taught to ignore it, to be polite, to be reasonable, to not overreact. I almost did the same. What I learned is this: power does not turn people cruel, it reveals who they already are. When someone sees love, children, or loyalty as obstacles, believe them the first time. Marcus lost his freedom, he lost his reputation, he lost the empire he thought would protect him from consequence. I gained my life back. Grace will grow up knowing she was wanted, protected, and chosen, not as leverage, not as a threat, but as a human being. If you are listening to this and something in your life feels off, do not wait for proof to respect your instincts. Distance yourself. Protect yourself. Ask the hard questions. Sometimes survival looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like walking away. And sometimes it looks like standing up in a room where you were never meant to speak. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from. This is the art of revenge. Not about hurting others, but about reclaiming your life.